If I saw another day, only to scream into the night. Nothing ever tries to change, even if I want to realize. 'Cause I've been sitting here, same old ways, taking off about the same mistake. Darling, when you go away, it won't be as simple for you.
Right, we're live. Yo, guys, Old Man G here, back again. And I know it's been a while, it's been time. I have been on vacation for those who are aware. I know there's been a lot of news that's been going on, but you know, I'm back, finally back in England. And I'm joined once again by the amazing Tom, the GOAT journalist, to make sense of a lot of the news that's been going on over the last few hours or so, the stock price, the shares. Are Qatar close to winning? Is Sir Jim out the race? You know, what is going on basically? So, but before we get into it, if you're new to the channel, to like, share, and subscribe to Red Devil Studio. Follow us on Twitter, we at United X, sorry, and smash the notification button for latest Manchester United news and more. It's a like. It doesn't cost a lot, so please like it. It helps the algorithm as well. Make sure you follow also Tom at Tom Journalist as well. And if you do have questions for Tom, I've pinned the Q&A tab in the chat, so please ask your questions away there. It helps a lot, please. Right. So before I obviously shout out to Jamie and I think there's Cameron in the chat as well. We'll get to your questions as well. But before we get into it, I mean, Tom, thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate it. Often the voice of reason, to be quite frank, considering all the stuff that we've been hearing. So for those, obviously, maybe for those who haven't known what's going on, can you basically give us an overall view as to where we actually are now with the sales process, bearing in mind what's happened over the last 40 hours?
Well, I guess what is on the tip of a lot of people's tongues is surrounding the report that came out from a Qatari media news outlet called Al Watan, where the editor of the paper and I think it was a tagged journalist, they had written up a report, and the wording behind it when you translated it to what they'd said was that they were essentially congratulating Sheikh Jassim and his delegation on a successful purchase of Manchester United, and that there was an announcement that was imminent. And the report itself is false. Like, there is no announcement, there is no imminent Sheikh Jassim's won or anything like that in terms of what I've heard from the process. But in terms of the Qatari side, they then 24 hours later backtracked, and there is, if you like, a theory behind it, and the theory behind it is there's an NDA agreement in place for a reason. You don't disclose who's won or whatnot before an announcement is made, and you certainly don't disclose any numbers or figures within an
Yeah.
agreement.
Yeah.
And based upon the rules of law within Qatar, false information and false representation within the media is a criminal offence in jurisdiction within Qatar. I think you can have a mega fine or like up to 3 years imprisonment, which really for these editors and that in 24 hours they completely backpedaled and said, look, it's not what we'd heard or from sources close to us. It was based upon what European outlets and media were reporting, and because it's to do with our own nation state, we decided to take upon what the Europeans had heard, and we've reported it via ourselves and our own media. And the translation had been a misrepresentation on their behalf. But, I look at it from the perspective of when the news had broken and everything, and I know with Jamie's question in the comments, which I'll answer in the same fold with this in terms of the stock price obviously rocketed, to the highest it had ever been during the process when this news had, evolved and came out overnight. I think it went up to around $22, $23 at the time, and it's still increased, and it's sat at that price really. It's never decreased, even after the reporters had come out and falsely claimed misreporting. But ultimately, swings and roundabouts with the actual stock price, the Glazer family have never been able to rise that stock price. And in the process, leading up to a full sale, the analysis that a lot of, stock experts had given, and one of whom I've got a brilliant contact within the US stock market who works via the New York Stock Exchange, he detailed it and explained it perfectly for me and colleagues that a business of the size of Manchester United, which is a publicly traded listed company, in the same fold that Twitter was, the shares skyrocket when there's an imminent process, and they don't skyrocket normally at that rate unless A, something's credible because a lot of people are putting money down on it, and B, it's either they're putting money down on it as a gamble or they're putting money down on it because Wall Street insiders know something. And a lot of Wall Street insiders, they invest a lot of money via stocks, and Manchester United is a brilliant investment to make at the time, in this current process, especially if you get the money that you generate from investment. But from what my friend had told me was the overall stock engagement, if a full sale had been already completed, then the stocks would have risen to upwards of $28 per share. That's, if you like, where a full agreement or an announcement had been made publicly. That's the sort of rated figure that could rise to, given the amount of people that are buying in stocks, because either they buy them just beforehand and then the announcement happens, or it happens afterwards because the sale hasn't properly gone through. But via the New York Stock Exchange, you can still exchange shares because it's still publicly traded and listed until an agreement is put in place for whatever a new ownership would want to do with that. So ultimately, the sort of roundup around the major reporting from the Qatari side was, you can look at it from two theories. Sheikh Yassim's group have, communicated in that way with a news outlet to say, listen, you need to keep this under wraps. People can make their own hypotheses of that. But the ultimate fact is that they had misreported and misled a lot of people in terms of the terms of what they actually meant. And you had a lot of, editors. I think you had a government official at one point in time who was on social media, congratulations, Sheikh Yassim, but quote tweeting the actual news outlet in Al Watan. And ultimately, I think, you can make up your own minds in terms of with what Sheikh Yassim's, hand has played in that. Personally, I don't think he's played a lot of influence in it. And the reporting around that Al Watan is 50% owned via HBJ, which is Sheikh Jassim's father, the former Prime Minister of Qatar and executive of QIA. He doesn't own any of it. And the misreporting in that, if you like, that was what gave that news article the weight, because Sheikh Yassim's father purchasing, and then his son's trying to buy Manchester United, and then they have this article that he'd been successful. Like that having the father as basically on the payroll of the newspaper and the ownership ballot sheet, it gave it a lot more weight than it actually should have had because he doesn't have any ownership of it at all. And at the end of the day, the misreporting and representation came out from the guys. And look, at the end of the day, you I guess from a journalist perspective, I respect them for what they did, where they publicly came out and they said, "Look, we'd misreported, we misrepresented, we didn't make it very clear enough in translation." In terms of we're picking up what European media is stating, not from what we actually know in terms of ourselves, which they didn't report. And look, it's an easy mistake to make, but at the end of the day, you are dealing with one of the biggest brands in not just in football but in the world in Manchester United. So you do something like that, you're going to blow up Twitter, Instagram, stock market, as we saw. Like it's going to blow up everywhere, really. So at the end of the day, they backtracked. They did what they had to do, really. And at the end of the day, I think enough said in terms of the Qatari side and overall from that assessment in terms of the last 48 hours.
Jeez, thanks, Tom. Really appreciate it because, to be honest, I was very unclear as to how, because much like yourself, I kind of looked, and also one of the reasons why I didn't actually even go, well, aside from the fact that I was busy on vacation, but why I didn't go live initially with the whole nation was because I wasn't entirely sure what this was being generated, the source, and the fact that not a lot of other mainstream journalists were kind of really covering the story. So the fact that, like I said, I think the only thing that I didn't quite understand was just why the stock share had gone so high for Manchester United, based on what was probably seen as a fake tweet. It was like, surely there must be something, in the market for so many people to bet on Sheikh Jassim. Is there some element of truth, especially given what appears to be a difference in opinion as to how the Glazers feel about Sheikh Jassim's new bid in the last week or so, given the fifth offer, and we're not hearing much about Sheikh Jassim. I mean, before I get to the questions in the chat, and obviously there are questions that we want to answer, like, do you think that there is still an element of truth, given how high the share price did go uncharacteristically? Do you think that there is still an element of truth, that there is something going on behind the scenes regarding a potentially Qatari takeover?
Look, a non-disclosure agreement is in place, but it doesn't, foolproof in terms of it stops somebody from talking. It's not a gag. It's essentially a legally binding contract. But at the end of the day, every journalist, including myself, we have our ways of, gaining information. You have to find an inroad. You have to find a way into to actually learn, what's actually going on with a situation, the same way that, a lot of journalists do with transfers. And I know from a lot of more maybe the mainstream media who's picked up on, especially in the British media, a lot of well-renowned journalists, they aren't really takeover experts per se. It's probably really the first major takeover barring Chelsea that they'd actually ever covered in this whole saga, really, over takeovers of major Premier League clubs. They're not financial experts, and I'm not going to come in here and say that I'm a financial expert, because I'm not. Listen, I have investments within businesses, and I own a couple of businesses in partnership with my family. But I'm not going to come in here and try and rule the law of business and state how it's done, because I don't have a qualification in that. But ultimately and overall, about what you've just said, G, regarding the actual stock, stock pricing, and is there some truth behind it? I mean, to be honest, if these guys have just cooked some, well, I can't even say that they've had a drink or anything, because it's barred within their country. But unless they've just cooked something up and just thought of cooked a story from absolutely nowhere, then I mean it's debatable. I think the only thing with Al Watan is the news newspaper that actually reported on it. If if HBJ, in terms of Sheikh Yassim's father, if he did actually own 50% of the article, I guess then you can say that there is some weight to it, even if they did deny it. If that makes much sense. If they did deny, like they'd misreported, but he still had 50% of the paper, then I think you can still say that there is a potential communication line to there. he's his father's son at the end of the day. Like, father and son, they're going to talk, they're going to speak. HBJ's played a role within his son's bid. So there would have been a communication line there. But me personally, from what I know anyway, regarding especially from the Middle East side, is that the Qataris completely denied it straight away. Sheikh Yassim and his delegation, they insisted upon there is no announcement, there is no that we've heard back from Rain or anything. And we reached out as well to sources within France who situate around within Ineos and that side of things, and that sort of bid from their side if there was an admission of failure that they had heard back from the Rain or the Glazer family, and neither group has heard back yet at this point in time. And really, if I'm being completely honest, after that fifth bid from Sheikh Yassim, the communication between Ineos, Rain, and the Glazer family, and then Sheikh Yassim, Rain, and the Glazer family, both sides of the communication, whatever way you look at it, have gone dead ever since that fifth bid. There hasn't been a main, communication line with either or of them. They're writing up the terms of an agreement in which they're at a point now, both groups, where they can sign on the dotted line for whatever offer. So essentially, the fifth offer from, say, Sheikh Yassim, if the Glazer family decide that's what they want to go with, then they don't need an exclusive period, essentially. Yes, he would be, if you like, the preferred bidder because he's the chosen one. And in the same case in point for Sir Jim Ratcliffe, but it wouldn't play a hand because a deal's already basically been written up. So it saves them a lot of time, effectively. And that's the one thing that I guess the process has not done, is save time, really. And it's dragged on for long enough. But at the end of the day, ultimately and overall, with the whole side of it, especially from the behind the scenes sort of rumors, you know, personally from my own perspective, I don't really think there is any weight to it. No, because there's ways and means that you could have reported this a lot better than just your local newspaper. That's like myself, being from Yorkshire. That's like me going to the Yorkshire Post, for example. If I wanted to coin it there, or I don't know, you could have one for Manchester. Like, I don't know, the Wythenshawe Times or something like that for maybe a lot of Mancunians who might know about. Like, there is a medium there. That's the sort of level that the Al Watan reporting had come from. But ultimately and overall, the way that it had been portrayed, especially from Sheikh Yassim's side, is he's a private individual. A private individual, regardless of if his father backs his bid or not, and he has all those contacts from being politically, in the political eye, they don't have an influence over a local newspaper. So at the end of the day, I guess the behind the scenes rumors, for me anyway, I don't see them having any weight to them, because if they wanted to have made an announcement and everything, like, they would just wait for the official announcement. And the way that Sheikh Yassim's group have gone about this, they haven't really let much out, if I'm being completely honest. Albeit they've been frustrated around the process, they've still stuck by the process 100%. They've not gone rogue. They've not, been untransparent and communicatable. I think they've been fair, really, in the whole process. So for them to just do something like this out of the dark would be really, uncharacterized, for them as a group, for how they've, operated as, as a delegation to actually try and acquire Manchester United. So for me, I don't think there is any truth behind the behind the scenes rumors.
I'm on mute. Sorry. So that's good. And thanks for clarifying that, Tom. I think that really hopefully should, for those obviously watching, really kind of put to bed, anything I'm not saying that there wasn't legit understanding as to why there was excitement going around the news of the last 40 hours. But, that does, I think, provide a lot of clarity just regarding the bid and the context I think it places, because I said there were a lot of people that were going, yes, Qatar's won, Qatar's got a 90% sure, all the rest of it. So, and I was still, as I've been for a lot of transfers this summer, I've been kind of like, until I see David Ornstein, Fabrizio, and my man here, Tom, make at least a comment about it in that direction, I'm not going to believe it. It's the same one I had with Kane, and lo and behold, today, and we might talk about that later, but Manchester aren't interested in Kane anymore. And I was like, and people getting annoyed. It's like, but that doesn't surprise me. Fabrizio, say no one has said that United were going to be able to secure Kane this summer. So it is what it is. So let me just quickly go to some of the questions in the chat. On the comments as well. Actually, remember, get your questions and comments in, guys. For those watching, 50 people watching, guys, get those likes up, guys. Get those likes up. I need those likes up, please. It really goes a long way. Jamie Wen says, Tom, where are we with the sale now, and has stock price impact? So we kind of did answer that.
Yeah.
So go back to it again. And there has been something in that, and it's hardly dropping as well. Yes, we kind of addressed that. So hopefully, Jamie understand where we are with that. Cameron says, do the new Premier League rules about leverage buyouts affect Jimmy Boy's method or purchase or not? That's a good question. My understanding is not, but I mean, what do you say, Tom?
How can I say it affects him in terms of he can't put any more debt on Manchester United was he to buy it. Is it effectively? So just to coin what a leverage buyout is, the best example is what the Glazer family actually did to acquire Manchester United. There was a family, they wanted to buy a football club within the United Kingdom. They went to JP Morgan. They used loans and bonds in the same way that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is using to try and buy Manchester United now. The law in 2008, when they actually first bought the football club, 2005, when the law had been passed at that time, there wasn't actually a law in place to state that you can't leverage, especially within world football and sport. You can't. There wasn't a law in place to say that you couldn't get loans from a bank and then the debt that you accumulate in terms of the loans you buy on the actual sporting project or sporting business that you're wanting to use the money to use to buy it with. And then you can use the debt that you bought it with and put it on that business, essentially. So, regarding the rule changes from the Premier League today, the rule changes via the Premier League in terms of the actual meeting. There was a meeting via all of the previous year Premier League sitters. So, all of the teams from last season's league, the one that's just finished now, all of the different clubs who were in that league were the ones that were sat at the table for today, not the new team. So, for example, you didn't have Luton Town executives who were in the meeting, etc. What you had there was you had all the different executives who had unanimously agreed. So they weren't in full agreement. There was people who were against it. And to coin it anyway, Manchester United's executives, one of whom voted and vetoed against this in terms of the rule change. Overall, the process, the Premier League clubs unanimously agreed upon that leverage buyouts are to be disabled from any potential ownership change or takeover process. So, for example, when the Premier League do an owners and directors test upon an individual, they have to analyze the individual in terms of the debt that if you're using debt to, first of all, buy a football club, where is that debt going to go? Is that going to go on, you as an individual? Is that going to go on your company? Where is that debt going to go? Because it can't go on this football club. That's essentially the veto from the Premier League. Now, does it affect Sir Jim Ratcliffe in terms of buying and his method to get into Manchester United? It doesn't, no. He can still do it. And the way that he can still do it is he can buy in, but the money that he's using to buy in, he can't put onto Manchester United. He has to either put that onto himself or Ineos, whatever, investment or company that he might have a majority stake in. He can't put it on Manchester United. So essentially, the debt that's already on Manchester United can't already be added to. Whether it was Sheikh Jassim to come in, Sir Jim, or whether it was me and you, G, who was mortgaging up, £6 billion to buy Manchester United. We can't put that on Manchester United as a football club. So effectively, any person who wants to use debt to buy a football club, it's no longer law. It can't happen. And they coined the phrase the anti-Glazer clause, which was bashed around for the last, 18 months, especially surrounding when Chelsea were being, sold. People were looking at those old options to actually use a leverage buyout to buy into Chelsea Football Club and then worry about the problems later, like the Glazer family did, for which Roman Abramovich denied those groups to ever have an involvement within the process because he was an ownership that actually cared about where the football club was going after. The Glazer family, in this case, they couldn't care less, to put it bluntly. So ultimately and overall, the method that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is using doesn't affect his bid, but it might affect him or his company per se, because the debt that he's using either has to go on him, which I think would be very unlikely of him to do. Not in terms of that he wouldn't do it or he doesn't have the balls to do it. I just think it's a lot easier to put it on a company's books than your own personal bank balance. That's just my personal opinion anyway. If you have a business that rakes in, a couple of billion per revenue year, that you're making profits, and you as an individual, have your own bank balance, but you're the majority stakeholder within that company, why would you put it on yourself? You just wouldn't. Put yourself into Jim's shoes. You wouldn't, would you? At the end of the day, it's not going to happen. So ultimately, it doesn't affect Sir Jim Ratcliffe's method and proposal. But the only sticking point, I can't remember if I mentioned it last time or not, I could be wrong, was surrounding the other 31% publicly traded listed shares via the New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah.
Those shares, and one of who has a major of that 31%, I think they have like 15 or 18% of the actual 31%, is a major US hedge fund. And Sir Jim Ratcliffe's proposal, really, if he doesn't communicate it properly with the other shareholders who have the other 31%, if he doesn't communicate properly with them, he could be liable to sue for millions, potentially even billions of pounds, depending on how much those Class A shares that those say hedge funds and individuals actually accumulate and what they're valued at. Because if Sir Jim was to buy in at 50% just to coin it, and the Glazers still had, 19, 20%, whatever, and then you still have the other 31% there, you would then have a scenario and a situation where those other companies, hedge funds, individuals, they can't accurately value their shares because Sir Jim Ratcliffe has bought in 50%, and he hasn't bought in all of the Glazer family's shares, for which now those companies, because the Glazer family have an accurate number of what they own, which is 69%, because it's one group and it's one, it's one family, it's a lot easier for those companies, minority companies who own a stake on New York Stock Exchange. They can accurately value their shares. But if Sir Jim came in with 50, well then you don't know how much Sir Jim's shares are worth. You don't know how much the Glazer families are worth, and you can't add them together because they're two separate families and individuals who have different percentages and valuations of what their shares are worth. Suddenly, you can't accurately value yours, which legally, under New York Stock Exchange, guidelines, you can't manipulate. It's called market manipulation. So therefore, Sir Jim Ratcliffe could be, he could be liable. And the only way I guess he can get around that is he accurately communicates with the minority investors around his proposal and plan to get them to back off and say, well, look, in the short term, you're not going to accurately value them, but in the long term, you will be able to when I buy all 6 of them out. And then I'm buying them out at this number, for example, let's say 3 billion, I buy the rest of them out for, then now you can accurately value your shares. That's the only, reasoning and thinking that Sir Jim Ratcliffe can get around that sort of involvement in terms of his method. And that's the bigger problem for Sir Jim. And if I'm being completely honest, that's an even bigger problem than him actually owning Nice, which owning another club is a big problem when you want to buy another one because of the UEFA's guidelines. That's minuscule compared to what this could turn out to in terms of his fight against the publicly traded shares via New York Stock Exchange. And that's why, hence, when we did a stream a couple of weeks ago, I was insisting and I was saying that Sir Jim Ratcliffe would look to pull away from America completely if he was to get in. He wouldn't want it on New York Stock Exchange because he doesn't know the rates, he doesn't know the markets, he doesn't know how that works. He knows how London Stock Exchange works. But one thing around London Stock Exchange is, where's the ownership of London Stock Exchange, G? Take a good guess.
Is it still based in the States, New York or something?
No. It involves a certain individual and where he's from within this process.
Not Qatar, is it?
Yeah. I'm not
Wow.
joking either. You can go and Google it. They have I can't remember if they own all of it, but I think they have a majority stake in it. Especially, are you really going to give somebody a competitor like Sir Jim Ratcliffe and let them come onto your market when they've just done you over?
Yes, yeah.
So like I said, there is complications there for Sir Jim, and the bigger problem is anywhere Sir Jim Ratcliffe looks, he's going to face scrutiny and problems. UEFA are going to want questions with him. Premier League are going to want to know about where this debt's going. Stakeholders are going to want to know how they can accurately value their shares. And he's not even going to have... And then, on top of all that, he's still got the fan outrage that's already here with him. He's got more headaches than paracetamols there than and painkillers than he can actually use to get rid of his headache. Essentially, that's the metabolism that I can use regarding Sir Jim.
Yeah. No, that's great, Simon. To be honest, one of the frustrating things about the British media is that there hasn't actually been more scrutiny on the Sir Jim bid. It's just it's there's all the praise, put the Manchester back in Manchester, all that sort of stuff like that. But really and truly, and one of the reasons why, because I try and be, and obviously having on this channel as well, try and be as neutral as possible, because I don't claim to be expert. I don't claim to know. All I can go by is what's basically been told by both parties and also what's gone to the press. But one of the things that has stood out to me is the fact that there has not really been any transparency of what the Sir Jim bid entails, and then hearing stuff about the use of debts and bonds and things, which I know is a part of an acquisition process. And it's cool, but as you said, that has to go somewhere, and presumably that debt will be managed by Ineos, for example. But that's what we're assuming. We've not been told that exactly.
But the thing is, that's the debt that they're using to buy it. And that's the problem with the wording. There isn't an outline as to what they're going to do with the existing debt already. Yes, and the reasoning because of that is they don't have to do anything to it if they didn't want to. Because they haven't said anything, I guess that makes people alarm bells ring in their head. Whereas Sheikh Jassim, do you know what? I'll clear the debt, no problem. That's not a problem. That'll go away from this football club. Publicly traded listed company. No, I'm taking it off that. I'll buy all of them stakeholders out. And really, if I'm being honest with you, that's why a lot of, if you like, the stock manipulation in terms of the rise in terms of the stock market around Manchester United, that percentage and the shares grew because the expectation of a lot of those people is, well, either Sir Jim Ratcliffe's going to be sued and he's going to be prepared to take that on, or the only option left is they sell to Qatar, or they pull a complete UE and they stay. But the likelihood of that, when you have a big offer from Sheikh Jassim on the table, quote a premium offer, it's very unlikely you're going to turn that down, really, if it is the sort of money that you've been looking for. So ultimately, I guess it balances out in terms of why the markets had blown up in the way that they had, because a lot of people's predicting that Sheikh Jassim's winning, or he's going to win this, and it's either they're taking a big gamble or they know something. But they can't obviously speak about these things. That's the point. That's the point in an NDA agreement.
No, that makes a lot of sense, Tom. Thanks, Tom. Let's just quick go through some of the questions. We asked. I just that. So shout out to my word in the chat, says big up audience and Tom. Question: how sure are you that by the end of this process, the Glazers will, at the very least, no longer be in control of Manchester United?
Well, I said before Sheikh Jassim had put this fifth bid in, and the expectation before I was predicting that he would bid again. The theory that I had at the time was the negotiations that they had done with Sir Jim Ratcliffe had gone that deep. I was expecting that either Sheikh Jassim is going to bid again, pull out, and then Sir Jim Ratcliffe's already going to have a negotiation in place with the Glazer family, for which he doesn't have an agreement. And he's been, negotiating and haggling with the Glazer family. and rain for upwards of nearly 3 weeks now.
Yeah.
And he's still not come to an agreement. Whether that's because they've not made their mind up or not, jury's out. The Glazer family had privately said that Sir Jim Ratcliffe, the proposal, money here and now and money later down the line, it's brilliant. It's what it's almost the dream.
Yeah.
But then you also have an offer now from Sheikh Yassim where you can get more money in the short term here and now rather than waiting later down the line, and you might. It's not a foregone conclusion. You might get a bit more later down the line, which isn't a guarantee, obviously. And the Glazer family, like, the one thing that they've always reiterated is they don't mind wasting time, but when money and time come together, suddenly you'll find out with the Glazer family that they'll speed this whole thing right up completely.
Yeah.
And you'll think honestly that you'll think they were like Lewis Hamilton in an F1 car. They'll speed this thing up that quickly. But in terms of the question around would the Glazer family still, at the very least, no longer have control, personally, if I had to predict it, like, I think the pendulum has swung to Sheikh Yassim. I'm not going to deny it in thinking that, because coining the word the word that's always been in my head for well over 5 days now has been this premium.
Yeah.
You don't put premium with a financial offer unless it's out of this world. It's something that somebody would it's something that Avram Glazer would have to take his glasses off to look at twice and think, what? Like, a premium offer is top range. It's better than, if you like, some journalists could quote it as being it's the best offer that they've put in or something like that. No, it's a premium offer.
Yeah.
Premium, it's like going from economy to first class on an airliner. That's how big in the jump that it is when you put the word premium and associate with something. So in either waiting around for this bigger offer to come in, which they now have, from my perspective anyway, I just think Sheikh Yassim now has gone tooth and nail and thought, I'm going to go through this process and I'm going to try and get a good deal. If I can get a lowered price than what I want, brilliant. But if I can't, I've still got the money there to do the whole deal if I have to pay the full price. That's the way that I think he's gone about this. I think he's had the money to do it. I'm not being stupid in saying that. I do think he has the money. His father has, contacts within the government. If they needed to, lend or loan money from a bank or, investment, wherever, like, it can be done. But I just think he has had the money all the time there. But if you back yourself into thinking that you can get a better deal, do it. Why not? And at the end of the day, I think the way he's gone about it, people will say Sir Jim Ratcliffe's been smart in the proposal that he's done. Sheikh Yassim's been smart in terms of that he's basically waited to the last minute and pulled the trigger, because he knows now that after he increased that fourth bid, Ineos went stum. They didn't improve. They didn't walk away. They did not say anything. Saying nothing when you're in the process of trying to get something is a very, it's almost seeding a hand to your opponent in terms of, well, that shut them up, didn't it? Right. Well, if we go again now and we put the big offer on the table, what they're going to do now? And suddenly now you're hearing around Sir Jim, he's going to invest the money that he's using to borrow to buy Man United into Nice. It's almost as if they're backtracking now after what you've done. So look into it for what you will. Me personally, I would, I said about, before Sheikh Yassin put the fifth offer in, I was saying it was, 60-40 towards Ratcliffe. Right now, if I'm being completely honest with you, I'll even go as further to say I think it's around 65, 35 towards Sheikh Yassim, because I just think the Glazer family have waited for this big offer, and I think they came into this process, the Glazer family. This is just the theory. Go on.
So I'll let you finish on. Go.
No, in terms of, I just think the theory is, I think the Glazer family came into this with all options on the table. We want an investor because we'd be prepared to stay because we can get more money down the line. But if somebody comes in with the big bucks and gives us a number that we want right now, we'll go. And I think Sheikh Yassim has the money behind him to give them that big offer here and now. And if he doesn't want to go bang on it, well, I'm sure as hell I think he can go pretty close to it. And I think the way that the 92 Foundation have ran their race, if you like, I think they've run it pretty well. But I just think that the reasoning behind why it's taken so long I think they could have paid £6 billion back in November when the Glazer family first opened this process. But why pay that much money if you think you can get a better deal for yourself? Newcastle and PIF was the best example. When Amanda Stavey and PIF built a partnership together and they said, we want to buy a football club, why spend billions of pounds buying, say, Manchester United or Liverpool when you can spend millions of pounds buying Newcastle and build them up to be a Manchester United, to be a Liverpool in 5-6 years? Because Manchester City was the model and handprint of that, pretty much.
Yeah.
You build and build and build, you invest, and suddenly you're up there with the big boys. And then essentially you've saved your money, but you've also made money later down the line. And at the end of the day, the way that the Glazer family have looked at this, give us the money that we want, we'll go. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And Sir Jim Ratcliffe can't give them that money here and now. So if Sheikh Jassim can, and via using the word that we got quoted in terms of me and my colleagues of premium, I think this is that big offer. I don't think it's bang on £6 billion, but I think it's pretty close to it. And when you convert it, I'd be staggered if the offer that he's made isn't over $6 billion. I would really be shocked, because that's not even £5 billion. I'd be really shocked if he hasn't.
Yeah. No, I think one of the things that, like I said, has confused me about the whole process, is that, and why, I'm still scratching my head, is because as you rightly said, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, I mean, I think the first thing is that I don't think we would have been in this situation if there weren't two major players. I think if it was either Sir Jim or or Sheikh Jim that was involved, we probably would have ended up getting like a full sale of some sort. I suspect, with whoever was offering the amount. Maybe, I don't know. I certainly think that if it was just Sheikh Jim, I think that it would have probably been over by now. However, the very fact that that really the only thing that changed with Sir Jim's offer was that the sort of partial buyout situation, where initially he offered a certain amount of money for 69% of the club, but now he offered slightly less for a partial buyout. That was the thing that changed. The idea of keeping the Glazers in charge, yada yada yada. But what for me has always not made sense is that, I mean, especially since, because the FA Cup final was 2 weeks ago, just over 2 weeks ago. And for all intents and purposes, Sir Jim was okay. Fair enough. He's going to be announced as preferred bidder, etc. That was what was heard. Maybe Ten Hag was like, okay, yeah, we don't announce it before the FA Cup, etc. So if the Glazers were really right, we are dead set on Sir Jim being it, there's no reason, in my opinion, why they just haven't accepted it and done and just like that's it. I don't know what else there is to wait for, and I think that's my key thing as to why. I'm not going to say I'm confident with Qatar, but the way I kind of see it is that I just don't understand what the Glazers are waiting for, unless they're wanting to get, unless the way I see it, and maybe you can vouch for it, I don't know, is that I feel like the Glazers are using Sir Jim Ratcliffe as a financial pawn to get more money out of Qatar. That's the only way I can explain why this process is taking so long.
To give a bit of context to what you're just saying there, that has been one of the hypotheses that the INEOS delegation, which Sir Dave Brailsford has been a key figure in, has alluded to with Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Like, boss, we've been in negotiations for weeks, and we've been in this process for so long. They know what we can offer. Why have they not taken us yet? Why? What is the process? What is the reason behind why not? Because, boss, you've put the offer on the table.
Yeah.
We haven't got anything else left to give. So what are they waiting for? If they want to choose us, choose us now. Like, they can have a fast track with us now. So the only reason in what you're saying, especially what you just said there, G, in terms of waiting, I just think in the same way as you, like, they've waited and waited to see if Qatar are going to put this big bid on the table, which, from what I'm hearing anyway, in terms of this fifth offer is that big bid. Like, I don't think the Glazer family will ever see this money for another 3-4 years, maybe even 5 years, unless somebody wants to do something with the stadium. And at the very means of the least, the Glazer family, if they didn't get the deal with Qatar, we got Sajim. We can fall back on a sword. We can still get a bit of money, but it's not the big money that we wanted. But it's half of it, or it's 3/4 of it, whatever.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the whole saga surrounding it, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, as a personal individual, wants to buy Manchester United, but he doesn't have the finances of his own self or his company to buy Manchester United at £6 billion. That's why he's using JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, loans and bonds. He has to do that if he wants to have a fighting chance, A, to even bid for it, but B, in the long term of it, if it was successful, to actually buy it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's why I say with the Premier League rule changes, what we've just discussed, the Premier League are going to scrutinise Sir Jim Ratcliffe a lot more than they would Sheikh Jassim. And the reasoning behind that is they don't know where his debt's going in terms of his bid. Apart from with Sheikh Jassim, he's already told them. It's out there for common knowledge. Everybody at the Premier League will know where that money is going for in terms of, he's already said, debt? No, not at Manchester United. The Premier League will just say, right, step forward, no problem. Let's check you out, check your finances, that's it. Right, Sir Jim's in the hot seat.
Yeah.
Sir Jim, what's going on with this debt? You're needing to use leveraged money to then buy Manchester United, but due to our rule changes, you can't then jurisdict that onto Manchester United. So where's it going to? And then Sir Jim Ratcliffe has to state legally where he's putting it, because he can't put it on Manchester United. So either you put it on your son or you put it on a company that you own. So at the end of the day with Sir Jim, you will get the answer as to where that money's going to go. And I'd be, if it was him that's successful, I'd be astonished if he put it on himself.
Yeah, no, I agree, and we'll watch the space. Let me just quickly read some comments and the questions that are left. RSC says, "I won't big up RSV. I won't be surprised if Glaze actually don't sell now since the shares went up. They are pump and dump family." I think, as Thomas already alluded to, I think we're at the stage. I feel that is unlikely.
I don't. G, let's be honest though.
Yeah.
Do you really think that they, as much as the parties interested in getting this club are frustrated?
Yeah.
The Glazer family will have run this process for upwards of 7 months.
Yeah.
To come away with not selling.
Yeah.
I don't really think that's an option. I know it is, but I don't see in the mind of there where they come into this process thinking they were getting billions, either to sell a bit of it or sell all of it. Yeah. How can you then just pull away from getting anything? The Glazer family, they want money one way or another. So I think they're going to accept something. I could be wrong, and I'll be blue in the face if I am wrong. I just don't, how can they walk away from money? I don't see it. Like even if it's a partial one with Sir Jim or a full one with Sheikh Jassim, or even we've not even discussed for weak minority groups. Like if you get money to come into your palm of your hand, how can you turn that down when you're you're probably the most greediest family in the world? More so maybe than the Adams family in terms of it. But ultimately and overall, why you have come this far to then not at least walk away with something? It would be staggering, let's be honest.
I agree. We'll talk about transfers a little bit later. What's going to Anthony Green? We'll probably talk about players towards the end. So I'll come back to that question. Scott says, which way do you think it will go on web? And we'll probably come out as the final question. Cameron says, apparently he can't put the debt on Ineos. He can't put the debt on Ineos because if Ineos fails, it's Inter Manchester United. That's interesting. I don't know how true that is, but I mean, Tom, what do you think about that?
In terms of what Cameron's saying there, he's partially correct in terms of the debt can go on Ineos. Yeah. However, Manchester United would be liable to the debt if Ineos was to deflate and fail. Yeah. So essentially, he can use Ineos to put the debt on it, but then if it goes tits up with them as a company, then Manchester United can be liable to it because that's one of the assets that Ineos owns, effectively. Yeah. In the same way that Nice would be liable, in the same way that Lausanne would be liable. Ineos Grenadier would be, liable. Mercedes Formula One team, because they have a stake in it, they would be liable. Like, there'd be different companies that would be liable, not just Manchester United, in terms of
of course.
Ineos having the debt. But like you say, in terms of the comparison of Ineos as a group, Sir Jim Ratcliffe has the majority shareholding, but he's not 100% owner of Ineos. And ultimately, the way that company works, the shareholders always have a meeting in terms of the process of how they sufficiently invest their funds as a company. They've
Yeah.
invested in sports. They want to invest at the highest level of sports. Buy one of the biggest brands and biggest football clubs that you can, Manchester United. But as Carmen's saying here, the way that the debts work is the debt can go on Ineos, but if Ineos was to go bust, bankrupt, whatever, then Manchester United effectively would have a bankrupt owner. That's just how it would work. But then the debts that are on Ineos, if Ineos haven't wiped them off through their own books and paid them off themselves, if that debt's just sitting with Ineos, which I'd be shocked if it was, and they didn't try to pay it off, or at least pay it off bit by bit in the long term, then what would be why would you have even considered trying to buy Manchester United? You're going to have to pay it off at some point in time. That's like me lending, £1 million to go on a building, a property scheme.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to pay the interest payments back at some point. So put a payment plan in place. That's how a lot of businessmen do it. You put a payment plan in place, take £100,000 out of our accounts per year for 10 years. Do something like that. And then suddenly you've paid it back the £1 million, but bit by bit. But you're still making money in investments at the same time, which will always replenish your funds. So, in terms of Cameron's question, the debt can go into Ineos. However, Manchester United would not be the only ones that are intertwined and liable, but they would be effectively the biggest one that is, or the most notable name that is, and business that is, or would be intertwined if that was to ever happen.
Thanks for that, Tom, and thanks for clarity. I think that's actually really, really good. Good to know, because I think a lot of people would have been concerned about the Ineos debt link with Sir Jim, and I think that's quite important to establish. Over 100 people watching, guys. If you're watching, guys, make sure that you subscribe if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second. Click that link, click that notification button so you know when we go live. And if you can't do either, at least like the vid, guys. It helps the algorithm. I'm hoping that we can get to 4K subscribers by the end of the year. Ideally 5, but we can get to 4, because we're just over. I think we've got about just over 300 subs till 4K. So, guys, if we get to 4K subscribers, that'd be great. Thanks. Just quickly read some comments. Simon Singh says, obviously, Glazers out, Qatar the way. J1 says, Tom, how far away from an answer? We'll come back to the last question. Done and dusted. If the Glazers choose the route, they open themselves up to losses. We can't really touch on that as well. Again, players will come to that later. Flex Felix says, I think Jassim offered $5 billion for a buyout and a promise of $1.5 billion in investment, but Glazers want the $6.5 billion. Pure greed. Yeah, I mean, is that something that maybe has changed? So I know that the reports about the bid about, that the Sheikh Jassim maybe offered 5, but that the idea was that he was going to pledge that additional 800 million or whatever in investments, and whether the Glazers are thinking, well, hang on a minute, why can't we, if given the fact you're going to pledge 800 million investments, why can't we just have that money? So is there an element of truth to that, where like the Glazers feel like, well, we know you have the 6 billion, and we want 6 billion, so where, just give us the 6 billion. Is there an element of that, or?
Well, in terms of what Flex is saying there, in terms of it, when the third round of bids went in, this was sort of the quoting and reporting that the number was 5 plus commitments of investment.
Yeah.
The numbers aren't accurate, and they aren't, affiliated, because, as I've said many times on many streams of UG and on other people's content, the NDA agreement bypasses anybody knowing what the financial numbers are, because then you can A, be liable, and B, be prosecuted. So at the end of the day, there is legalities and processes in place to stop people actually knowing the numbers. Of course, people ask, like, if I'm not going to be stupid in saying it. I have asked, like, what numbers are, and every single time you ask, there's an NDA agreement in process, this, that, the other. Numbers and disclosed figures can't be disclosed to anybody, whether it be multi-billionaire journalist, or you Bob from the corner shop. Like, it doesn't equate to it. But in terms of what Flex is saying here, around about it, the pledged investment on top of the buying the football club was actually rounded up to £1 billion. $1 billion, which equates to £800 million. That's as a startup investment figure. So a startup investment figure means it can go down and they could pull back on the investment a little bit, or they can go up in terms of the investment over time, whatever they decide to do. But they're pledging something, and they're making that public knowledge that they will put something in. In the same way, for example, since Sheikh Mansour bought Manchester City, £1 billion has been put into that football club. Sheikh Jassim is basically promising near enough that, but just a little bit less in terms of £800 million. But as we've alluded to before, G, if he wanted this football club that badly, and he thought that he was going to lose out on it, he's always got this pot of money that he can fall back on. He's always got £800 million sitting there to put into the bid. Put some of it in, put all of it in, do whatever you want. And that money that he has in that pledged investment pot, he can get another couple £100 million. Like, for example, he could use the £800 million, put it on his bid, buy the club. In 3 years' time, he would have, to be honest, if he put in, I don't know, £400 million of his own money in 3 years, in terms of investment into the team, and he grows Manchester United commercially in those 3 years, because it's a debt-free football club also, Manchester United would make more money, therefore it would be a self-sustainable football club. Meaning that Sheikh Jassim, in the long term, wouldn't effectively need to put in as much money as maybe Sheikh Mansour did when he bought Manchester City and he pumped in £1 billion. He wouldn't need to do that. And the way FFP works nowadays, it's the money that you generate in terms of your revenues accurately articulates how much you can from your net profits, which then states your net spend in terms of how much you can spend per transfer window. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. A self-sustainable Manchester United with no debt, after 3 years, when a debt's cleared on Manchester United, after 3 years, Manchester United could accurately spend £250, £300 million per window. That's just the summer window. That's not including a £50 million for one player in January, for example.
Yeah.
So, in terms of a sustainable model, Manchester United sustainably can compete with a Manchester City for the best players in the world, PSG for the best players in the world. Like right now, the conversation around Kylian Mbappe would be happening at Manchester United because he's one of the best players in the world. You have the finances as a self-sustainable football club to buy that player if you wanted to. It can happen. And a lot of Manchester United fans' dreams around buying the best players in the world, it can happen if it was a self-sustainable model, but it's not. And that's why, in terms of the offer that Sheikh Yassim's put down, this big offer now, in terms of the premium offer, if he's taken the money out of the pledged investment to buy the football club, if I'm being completely honest with you, if he did do that and then he re-evaluated and upon announcing that he was the new owner and he said, look, I had to take the money away from the pledged investment, so I can't pledge as much as I want to in the long term in terms of £800 million, but I'm prepared to invest £300 million in the short term. But obviously then he would have to say that because of the way FFP works, yada, 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 any owner can only put in 10% per annual season into the football club in terms of investment from their own pocket. They can't put in, 50%. They can't put in 60%. You can only put in 10%, which really that's only like £50 million, if I'm being completely honest. It's not a lot, but to some clubs like maybe a Brentford, a Fulham, that is a lot. That's a player for them, really. Yeah. But in the grand scheme of things, to Manchester United, that barely gets you. Well, if I'm being probably about Mason Mount. Probably gets his left leg, his right leg, maybe. But like at the end of the day, that's just how Manchester United, transfers work. But no, in terms of Flex's offer, of course it's pure greed. The Glazer family, if they know you've got £1 billion, $1 billion sitting there, you best believe they're gonna have a go at trying to take it. Even if they're not, they don't end up getting it, they're going to give it a go. I'm sure a lot of people here, look, love it or hate it. If you know somebody's got more money at the table, you're going to wait. No. Like, and really, I think he came out, Sheikh Jassim, chest out, big bollocks, and said, "Look, I'll buy the club, 100%. It's debt free, and I've got £800 billion." I think he came out thinking, I've put a big statement here. I'm the man. I've got the money to buy it. I've got the money to clear the debt, and I've got the money to put in. Yeah. I've got money all over the place that I can put into this club.
Yeah.
And I think maybe he blew up a bit too much in that case.
Yeah.
And he gave away a lot more than he probably should have done. Maybe he should have done a bit more research on the Glazer family. But really and ultimately, I just don't think when you have that much money in the palm of your hand, I don't really think you care what people think, to be honest with you. And if you know people or not, because at the end of the day, money talks, and especially to the Glazer family, it does.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%, Tom, 100%. Over 100 people watching. Make sure you like the vid, guys. Like the vid and subscribe if you are new. Ilias says Jim never will give that money to the Glazers. RDZ says hopefully we can get a decision tomorrow. Hopefully. But to be honest, I mean, in fact, I'll even phrase this into a question, Tom. Do you think, because as you said earlier, kind of in the stream, that there is that the Sheikh Jassim premium offer has kind of thrown things a bit. We're now like approaching the middle of June. We've got 2 weeks left. Do you expect to see a decision by the end of this week, or do you think that there's going to be further discussions? Because I think one of the things that concerns me is that, okay, let's just say that they go for Sir Jim, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible, that Sheikh Jim further puts another bid again, for the Glazers, and further extends the process? I mean, how do you think that works? Do you think that we're going to get an answer sooner rather than later, or do you think that this whole new premium offer, as well as potentially further offers from Sheikh Jassim, may lead us to more delays?
Well, put it this way: you have the 31% stakeholders who want to know what's going on with the football club so they can accurately value their shares. You've got Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos wanting to know. You've got Sheikh Jassim wanting to know. You've got the Rain Group needing an answer so then they can pursue a deal with whichever party. And the Glazer family have, if coin maybe a British phrase, they've flip-flopped, if I'm being completely honest. They have. After the third round of bids, Sir Jim Ratcliffe's our guy. Privately, let's negotiate with him. Let's do him a deal, blah, blah, blah. Sheikh Jassim, you're going to have to improve your bid if you want to come back in. Right, fourth offer. No, offer's still not good enough. Sir Jim, we're prepared to go public with you. Right, fifth offer. Take it or leave it. And suddenly now, nobody's talking. Sheikh Jassim's side, the only thing that they've talked about really since that fifth offer has been dismissing these reports that they'd won. Sir Jim Ratcliffe's camp, nothing. Nada. They've said absolutely nothing of the sort. Rain Group, nothing. Even the Glazer families. Do you know something? They've been so hyped up and on PR for this whole process, either damning or condemning groups from saying anything. They even normally the people that love to talk, they've said nothing. Not a word. Stum. So, in terms of what you said around if Sir Jim Ratcliffe was to win, would Sheikh Jassim come in with another offer? No, he wouldn't. As far as I know, it's you pick me or you forfeit my offer. It's as simple as that. And I think, especially as well from the Sir Jim Ratcliffe camp, you can safely say that would be the same thing. Only that his offer is in terms of he can't put in another offer. whereas Sheikh Jassim could do if he wanted to, because he can outdo Sajim. Whereas Sajim can't outdo somebody who's buying something fully, where he's only buying partially, effectively. So really and ultimately, and I think after the fourth bid, when Sheikh Jassim made that fourth offer, you didn't get anything from Sajim. He didn't, hesitate and think, shit, he's bid again, right? And he's put more money in. Like, he didn't do that. And
No.
there's two reasons why he didn't do that. Is either A, he was still winning at the time, or he doesn't have any more money. And then after now, Sheikh Jassim puts in this other offer, which is now being quoted as a premium offer. I further stress that I would believe he doesn't have any more money. Because if it's a premium offer, I don't care if you've got money or not. You're scrambling around. You go in. I don't even know. Like you're picking up your receipts. Like you get on eBay. You sell. Your book shares. You sell your wine collection. Like you're generating funds to buy the football club. If Sir Jim Ratcliffe isn't scrambling around somewhere, and the only theory that I have is he can't get any more money from anywhere to buy it. That's the only theory that I have, especially. And when you think about it, that you had Elon Musk who used £44 billion worth of debt to buy Twitter, which then hit the market in America. The interest payments to actually use debt is ridiculous and sky high now. So a lot of business people in America aren't making a lot of money at this point in time. And Sir Jim Ratcliffe, by having to use that method in terms of the interest payments, he's going to cripple himself or Ineos in 10, 15 years' time if they don't make Manchester United a success. So he's gambling a lot. I'll be honest, he's gambling a lot. But in terms of Sheikh Jassim, if Sir Jim Ratcliffe was to go forward and be picked ahead of him, he wouldn't bid it again. No, as far as I know, anyway, he'd withdraw his offer. And the offer that he's left sitting on the table right now, that's no longer there. He would withdraw the whole thing, and he's walking away. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Fair enough, man. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Glazers, Ilya says Glazers are clowns. Always wanted to get your money from Qatar. Iceman obviously says a lot of Glazers out in the chat, so we also know where people, where people are thinking about now. So Jim, we are still in debt. Jim can't run Nice, and some United fans want him. Well, there are certain. I'm not going to name any names, but there's certain Twitter spaces or Twitter handlers that have. Listen. The thing is. I think that I obviously notice in this community that a lot of people are. I'd argue 90% of the people are obviously pro Jim, and that's pro Sheikh Jassim, and that's fine. And I understand why people aren't for Qatar. Obviously, human rights issues, various different things, sports watch, all these different things, and the way people see football should be run. So, but what I would like stress is because I see this kind of ongoing civil war with United fans who are pro Jim, who are pro whatever. At the end of the day, like for me, it doesn't really. I won't say it doesn't really bother me, but like. At the end of the day, like there's nothing you can do about it regardless, is the point I'm trying to make. Because at the end of the day, whether it's Sir Jim or Sheikh or Sheikh Jim, the decision as to who owns Manchester United is not coming from the fans, it's coming from the Glazers. That's it. So whether if the Glazers decided Sheikh Jassim, then it's Sheikh Jassim. If the Glazers decided Sir Jim, it's Sir Jim. There was nothing that fans of Manchester United could do about it. So ultimately, you're going to just have to accept whatever decision eventually comes your way, because as a fan, you have no power over it. You might have a preference, and obviously people clearly have preferences, but at the end of the day, the person who's in charge of the Glazers, and the Glazers are only going to do what's best, which is making as much money as possible. It's really simple as that. So I don't really get the kind of infighting that I see with certain fans where you're also Jim or pro this or pro that, when at the end of the day, like, it doesn't matter how many tweets you post or how many arguments you get into, you have no control over what the Glazers do. It's as simple as that, really, So we're United fans are powerless in the situation. So regardless of what happens, you just got to just hope for the best. That's as simple as that, really. What's next? Jassim buys us at zero debt. End of the season, we will have at least 300 million transfer budget just from revenue, and we will all be sustainable. Jassim doesn't need to dip into his pockets as well. We'll come to transfers in a later because, again, the longer this goes on, I think the transfer window is officially open now. And obviously, the longer everything goes on, because bearing in mind, obviously, people need to be aware that we still the deal still needs to go through the Premier League approval process as well. You know, that has to happen. That will often take another 2-3 weeks as well. You know, so really and truly, if we don't hear anything this week, and we're still going to take us 2 weeks to figure out this whole process, don't expect the club or anyone to do anything until probably middle of July, which for me is unacceptable when you consider that we got preseason coming soon, that the season starts, was it the second week of August? Second week of August,
yeah.
season starts. So basically, at minimum, we might get the takeover deal done by when you include the Premier League discussions, the middle of July, which gives us less than a month before the Premier League starts. That's where we are right now. And that's why this needs to be done ASAP. But I don't have any confidence in these frauds, to be quite frank. Ines is right. Yes, please like the video, guys. Please like the video. 170 people watching. If you're new, subscribe as well to the channel, please, so we can keep on going to the goal of 4K subscribers by the end of the year. Jonas says Jassim should give them what they want to go in the summer transfer window. I mean, he probably has. I actually think that the question is not, and maybe Tom can allude to this. Is it really the issue? Is that Sheikh Jassim isn't giving what the Glazers what they want, or is the issue, as it's always been, that Avram and Joel do not know whether they want to retain some level of control or interest in the football club? So even if they offered the $6 billion, if Avram and Joel are like, well, hang on a minute, yeah, but we still want to have some involvement for whatever reason, so we'll still go with Ineos and Sir Jim. What do you think?
If they got £6 billion right here and now, we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
Okay,
they would have took it straight away.
Okay.
£6 billion for a club that has only just this year made money from recovering from COVID, poor seasons, poor recruitment, leveraging more debt into the football club. It rises. They haven't even been able to take dividends out because there isn't any profits to take dividends from. So, in terms of with what you said around Joel and Avram, and if their minds are wanting to stay, those two, in terms of the Glazer family, are the biggest ones and biggest members in terms of money. The money that they care about, if they get it, they'll walk. No mistake about it. And that's why I've always alluded to that phrase when we've done these shows, G. If you had an Elon Musk, a Jeff Bezos who woke up one day and said, I'll pay $6 billion for Man United, done. That's it. And at the end of the day, the Glazer family, really, if I wanted to coin it, if they went to, I don't know, if they might have Elon Musk's number or they might have a way to get it. Yeah. So, what do you value Manchester United at? I don't know, £6 billion sold.
Yeah.
That's how the Glazer family would work. If they get somebody who could do that, which they do in Sheikh Jassim, they have somebody who can give them that sort of money, whether it's state-owned, state-backed money, private individual, piss pot, whatever you want to say. If the money's there, the Glazer family want it. That's it. It's as simple as that. And coming into the process, when this is going back a bit, though, in November, the rhetoric was, the word that they used was strategic alternatives. But the insiders, from what they were stating at the time, the people that were close to the Glazer family and sources close to them, was insisting that the four siblings, Darcy, Brian, Edward, and Kevin, that's it. The other four siblings wanted to be bought out. They wanted to be bought out 18 months ago by, 16 months ago by Apollo Investment, for which that deal didn't, it faltered and it stagnated. The Glazer family couldn't agree the terms in terms of the price. But the four siblings have always reiterated they want out. They're fed up of the mediocrity. They're fed up of, if you like, their surname being, probably the most hated surname that is in world football. Like, they hate the overall rhetoric of it all. And the way that Joel and Avram have looked at it is they've been the public figures in terms of the Glazer family. They're the ones that you would see at Old Trafford. They're the ones that you've seen at Wembley 3 times this year. Like, especially in terms of Avram. They're the most publicly figured ones that get documented around the Glazer family. The overall point that I'm cutting across here is that the process opened up, 4 of them wanted to sell. But the one thing that all of those members are in agreement of is if the right money comes in, we dip, we go. And the right money that they've wanted is £6 billion, for which, if you equate that to dollars, that would be around $7.4 billion. I could be wrong. I'd have to, do the maths and everything and exchange it. But it's over $7 billion, which is, and the one thing that I've always said to you, G, and I've said throughout the whole of this is, if they got $1 billion each, they'd walk straight away. No problems. If they get $1 billion each, like, we wouldn't even be sitting here on this stream. Somebody had already got the football club already. That is how strongly the Glazer family have gone from that mantra. And at this point in time now, I guess, we're at the point now where you have somebody who's clearly has the money to keep on bidding and bidding and bidding in Sheikh Jassim. He's bidded 5 different times. You have somebody who can cut you a deal, Sir Jim, basically give you what you wanted 16 months ago. Really? But you've got this big money here and now. So really now, at the end of the day, if the answer couldn't have been clearer, and the only reason why I believe anyway that they sway more towards if they got the right money that they would sell is you don't contact Nasser Al Khalifi. Whether he didn't, influence the bid or he didn't speak to Sheikh Jassim, which from my understanding is that he did, but he spoke to him regarding building a football club, not around the actual offer that he'd put in. The Glazer family, you don't go direct to somebody like that if you want to do a deal with Sir Jim.
Yeah.
That's literally, honestly, if I'm trying to think of a way that you could phrase it, like, that is pretty much like you go to Sir Dave Brailsford, for example, and say, and get Sir Jim to put more money in that. Put some more money on the table.
Yeah.
That's if I can, I guess create a medium between the two. That's the realism if it was on the Sir Jim side, if they were to do that. But obviously they haven't. And this is what reasoning why, if they get the sort of money that they're looking for, they will walk. And if it came out to it that Manchester United had been sold and they'd put it as an undisclosed figure, so that it's not publicly disclosed what it was sold for.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, it's going to be pretty close to £6 billion because they've not budged. They haven't budged. And like you said, earlier on, if this was one person, you can try and negotiate with them. But because you have somebody next to you who wants this club just as much as you do and has the money behind them to do it, well, you can't negotiate. You're just bidding. And as the Glazer family said when they wanted this, they wanted a bidding war, but they've got a mini bidding war. They haven't, it's not really a bidding war when you have only one person who can bid. If I'm being honest, it's Sheikh Jassim. So at the end of the day, the whole process around it, the Glazer family now, they have the offer, if you like, that they might have been expecting with Sheikh Jassim. It's here now, and the one thing that I've always known anyway, especially with going back to the first question that we had around the reports that were coming out of Qatar, is the one thing that I always heard from colleagues and friends that had been to the Qatar World Cup and they'd met some fantastic people out there, the bestest of hospitality, food, culture, education that they had and everything in terms of learning about the country in the Middle East, the connections that they built. The one thing that I'd always heard, especially around their media in terms of Qatar, is whenever they say something, listen, because they don't say something very often. And that's the one thing that I've heard in terms of if it makes global news. And when the Qataris, if they were to eventually potentially buy this football club, in Sheikh Jassim's case, I think there would be a lot more publication surrounding him, because it's not like how can I say it? Sheikh Jassim as a person, people only know of really 3 images and a statement. That's all we really know about this person on a personal level. It's very, It's
Private.
not no, it's it's private, but it's not normal. Somebody who's buying something for £6 billion potentially and
Yeah.
only has 3 pictures to their name, like it's not normal. It really
Yeah.
isn't. But the only thing I'll say in terms of it all is the rhetoric around Sheikh Yassim is, as far as I know regarding him, is he's a very private guy. He's not a social media. He's not big on social media. He doesn't
Mm,
really believe in posting about his life, energizing things like that. He was at he did his education here in the UK at Dorset, and
mm.
he did he got his military badges here. He passed out as a military cadet. Yada yada. He worked on sorry, he worked on the board at Credit Suisse, Switzerland, one of the biggest banks at the time, and I know it has gone out of business now. But there was, like I say, he's built himself up his career, but he's been very private. He's a private guy. In comparison to maybe his father, who's been in the public eye for nearly 20, 30 years, especially within Qatar,
Yeah.
it's a big difference, really, in comparison. He's not, if I'm being honest, he's not really his father's son in that case, in
Yeah.
terms of his personality, but he believes in, well, why should I? Why should I get involved? Why should I turn up at Old Trafford when I can send people there to do it? Like it's almost like at the end of the, for example, Sheikh Mansour, he's been to 2 Manchester City football matches in 13 years. Like, but he's put £1 billion into something.
Yeah.
Like it's as if these guys they don't really, not that they don't care, but they just don't see why they have to do certain things. And look, if you've got the money behind you, then well, if you've got the money behind you, you don't have to do anything at all.
Yeah.
Let's be
No.
honest. You can be waited on for the rest of your life. You can, cup of tea, whatever you want in the morning. Somebody will go and get your local newspaper, whatever. Like you'll always have people around you that will do anything for you. That's the one thing that I know. But especially around the Qataris is whenever they say something and it makes global news, you always listen to it.
Listen.
That's the one thing that I've always learned, especially around Middle East.
Fair play, Tom. Fair play. We'll begin to round this up because I'm going to have to go to bed soon, actually. Thank you guys for watching and listening for so much. Really appreciate it. I'm going to quickly read your comments and we'll go to the subject of transfers, I think. Because I think that's something that we're not addressed. But hopefully a lot of what Thomas said, what we discussed, has addressed some of the concerns regarding the news regarding the Glaze update, as well. United Red says, "What's happening?" As he's here in the stream, bro. Vex exactly. Sustainability is what other clubs are complaining because the revenue United generates whilst in debt, sparing to international debt. Imagine without the debt. Exactly.
Yeah.
Glazers will sell after. Well, God, I hope, God forbid, Jojo, God forbid. Yeah, Glazers. I hope not. I really hope this isn't true. Nah, they won't. Smash says Bayern are now favored to sign Kim. Man United losers. Fab tweet. I've checked Fab's tweet, and all I see is that Bayern are also interested. He's on their radars on the list. I haven't seen that Bayern Munich are favorites over Manchester United. But I wouldn't be surprised at the end of the day. It is what it is. Shit, money. They're sorting their transfers. Shout out to Lucky Singh in the chat. Sell Manchester United. Noel the Red Devil. Shout out to the Red Devil says, why should Jassim overpay when the club is worth between 4 or 5 billion? He offered over 5 billion. It's just pure greed. Now, I mean, yes, but as Thomas rightfully said, Noel, the Glazers had always wanted the bidding war. They always wanted the bidding war. That was always what they wanted. I mean, if they got the club for 7 billion, I'm sure they'd be even more ecstatic. They always wanted. And as I said, I think if there was only one, if it was only just Sheikh Jassim, if, for example, if Radcliffe had just pulled out the race and said, "Listen, I don't have enough money. I'm out. I'm not going to go involved, etc." Like Lycus did, then I think that maybe you would have an argument. But I think that because there's these two, and because like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if we learn in the future that Sheikh Jassim wins, and ultimately Sir Jim was just basically being used to get more money out of Qatar.
Let's be honest. That's what's going to be portrayed by anybody. Let's be honest.
Yeah. If Sheikh Jassim wins it, it's going to be literally going to be that Qatar won because Sir Jim was used to get more money out. If Sir Jim wins, and then the only thing I guess I'll say is that will mean, at least the way I would interpret it, is that Joel and Avram, for whatever reason, still want to retain some personal connection to the club, because the other four siblings seem to not give a crap, to be honest. Shout out to Lucky Signal in the chat. Norvetter again says Glaze will delay in school. So I mean, I think as far as we're already screwed in the transfer window. We're already screwed. We're already screwed. Northampton Town fan. You mean me, Luke? I mean, you never know. Depending on what happens to Manchester United in a couple of years, man. You never know, man. You never know. We are, but one time we did great business under David Gill. A lot of obviously patience saying the that era is over. No, I don't. Oh, okay. Speaking to someone. Dundee just says, considers any chance delays also see if the Iraq can help as a non-Middle Eastern faction does not. I don't understand this question. Conspiracy. Any chance delays also to see if the Iraq can get help so non-Middle Eastern faction does not own the club. So what do you mean that, like, is there a way that Sir Jim would delay the takeover to get help? Is my understanding of your question. But as I think Tom has already addressed before, I think that the fact that Sir Jim has not done anything for about a month now tells me that there's not a lot he can do. I mean, I assume you concur, Tom.
Yeah. He's put after the third offer, nothing has changed. The only thing he did when he put in the third offer was that he had 3 different proposals at the time. 69% at a reduced figure, for which you might as well just toss it out of hand because it's not a lot of money, really. 50%, and then you had a 50 plus 1% scheme where he was buying 51%, and then the 1% in addition that he buys goes back to the Glazer family, which they buy, then accumulate up, which then gives them essentially 20%. And it just rounds it up for them, essentially. Apart from those 3 proposals, he's not done anything different. The money's not changed in any of those proposals, as far as I'm aware, anyway. It's still the same set figures. But what those actual figures are, I don't know. But in terms of the numbers, the one thing I know around Sir Jim is the numbers haven't changed. He's not added any more, and he's not stretched them, any longer than 4 years at the max in terms of a full buyout, if for whatever proposal he went for.
Big up Jay to Western Currencies United. Go looking at Mount Newcastle looking for God help us. Big up. Yeah, let's just go to it. Let's just briefly talk about transfers. So obviously Samasi kind of alluded to it with the whole Kim story. We're hearing reports of Harry Kane not obviously United's not interested in Harry Kane as well. Tom, do you have anything update wise in the transfer for Manchester United? I mean, I know for a fact that we can our hands are tied because of this takeover. But is there any truth in a United link with anybody right now? Because it looks like, if I'm honest, Tom, that, as I suspected, that all the hype around, we're going to get this player, as always is the case when you get to transfer window. It looks like to me, as someone alluded to in the chat, I think it was Mega, that, you wouldn't be surprised if, United go for Højlund and maybe even bring Greenwood back, given, the lack of availability to sign a Kane or anything like that. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, regarding Harry Kane and the sort of update regarding that is Manchester United have effectively withdrawn their interest. They're not interested in signing Harry Kane at this stage right now. Obviously, as we know, things can change. Kylian Mbappe dropped a bomb on PSG. The other night, and said that I'm not extending a contract after a certain time.
Yeah,
Harry Kane could put in a transfer request and say, I want to leave, directly to Daniel Levy, for which he's not done. And even the last time before, when Manchester City came calling, he didn't do. So, there is a complication. There is a problem there. Look, I'm not going to deny saying it with Harry Kane. The money that Daniel Levy's quoting, like, people think that the money that he was quoting was 100 million. Put another 100 million on top of that, you get 200.
Yeah,
and so even with 1 year on his contract, he still wants that money. He wanted that money when Harry Kane to Manchester City was a possibility. But they weren't. They were paying, and Manchester City, to be fair to them, will pay 150. No, it's 200. It's 200 or it's no deal. And they turned down 150 million pounds for Harry Kane at that stage, which I thought, if Daniel Levy can do that, then let's be honest, 1 year on his contract, I don't even think that's going to make much difference, really. So
exactly.
around Harry Kane, I still think, as much as Manchester United have said that they've withdrawn their interest, I think Harry Kane is still of interest because if something changed, I think the plans would change. I think they would go for him. If Harry Kane dropped in a transfer request, I think it would be stupid for Manchester United not to even just put in a feeler offer. I don't know, put in £80 million. We'll just put in an offer for the sake of it. Like you say, we made some out today. Put in £40 million offer, get a feel for it. Put in an offer, see what you say. And clearly, like I say, Chelsea are willing to sell Mount. They rejected it out of hand. So with Harry Kane, they've withdrawn the interest for now, but it could still change. And if they haven't already bought another striker before something else changes, then I think they'll go for something really for Harry Kane. They might look at pursuing something for him, but ultimately and overall with that, there isn't a process to sign Harry Kane right now. Now, in terms of one of the names that you mentioned, in terms of Rasmus Højlund, he is priority number one after Harry Kane. And the sort of process that I know around Rasmus Højlund is John Murtough had spoken with Atalanta's president. It was a month ago, actually, that he'd put the feelers out and said, "We're interested in Rasmus, and would you be willing to sell him?" Atalanta quoted, "We'll sell him for €60 million, which is around about £48 million, or I think it's 50. I could be wrong. That's the sort of figure that we wanted, but it's a negotiating price. Manchester United could do 40 plus 10 in add-ons or something. Manchester United, a lot of clubs nowadays, they use add-ons. And Manchester United are no dissimilar. They use add-ons in a lot of deals that they do. So you can get a better deal for yourself, really. And I think with Højlund, Erik ten Hag, especially, from what I know regarding Erik ten Hag, his agent, which is Kos Vias, who's Erik ten Hag's personal agent, the agency that he works for, I can't remember what it is now. It's just slipped the top of my mind. Anyway, the agency that he works for, Kos Vias, his agency is now the agency of Rasmus Højlund. So look into that what you will. I don't, Erik ten Hag and his agent apparently are, teetotal the tight. You can look into that for what you want, but I think if like you say, with the interest that they've downplayed in Harry Kane, I think they've completely pulled the plug on that plan. And the best backup option really is Rasmus Højlund, from what I know anyway, in terms of Manchester United's plan for another striker. Randall Kolomuani was a major, he was, above the list before Højlund, 8 days ago. But the price tag that Frankfurt have put on him of €90 million, which is up to £80 million or £78 million, something like that. Manchester United aren't going to pay that figure for somebody like that, when really they wanted to pay £80 million for a proven striker like Harry Kane. You're not going to pay that sort of money for a young striker who's not proven in the Premier League. That's the sort of theory that Manchester United have around that. And the one thing that, in terms of the sort of, to move on to Mason Mount, Manchester United.
God. Sorry, sorry. Go on. Yeah.
Manchester United had put in a £40 million offer. Chelsea, this stands for well over a week now, while they've been feeling out what they're going to do with Mason Mount. Is they want 70 million plus 10 million in add-ons. And I can tell you now, there's not a club in the Premier League, there's not a club in Europe that are going to pay that money. The most that I know Manchester United are prepared to pay is 55. But that 55 could be 40 plus 15 in add-ons. That could be 50 plus 5 in add-ons. That's not going to be 55 straight away. They don't value Mason Mount more than £55 million. I think at the very max, maybe 60, but add-ons are included within the 60. It's not 60 plus add-ons. They're not going to pay that sort of money for a player that has 1 year left in his contract and has said that he wants to come to them and them only, when they could just wait a year and get him for free. In the same way that you could do the same thing for Harry Kane. So, in terms of the scenario, if the one thing that I know, especially from John Murto, who's led the negotiations for Mason Mount, is the conversations that they've had with Win Stanley, one of the directors at Chelsea, is that if Chelsea don't budge on the negotiation, we're going elsewhere. It's as simple as that. But Mason Mount's a player that Eric Ten Hag had put as one of his priorities alongside Harry Kane. So we're going to do what we can to get the manager's player. But Eric Ten Hag's in an agreement with John Murto and the recruitment department that you don't pay over a certain price for him for 1 year left in his contract, because that money can be spent on a player who you could get a Caicedo who's got 3 years left in his contract, and you're paying an extra, maybe 15, 20 million pounds for a player that you can negotiate a lot, who's harder to negotiate with because they're on a long-term contract than Mason Mount, who's on a short term. So effectively, Manchester United they've put in an offer which they knew was going to be rejected. They were never going to accept 40. And at the end of the day, the offer that that Chelsea are wanting, it's astronomical. They want in a fee for a player of whom hardly featured last season, and also of whom doesn't really, he doesn't want to be there. Let's not put it frank.
No,
He
he
doesn't want
doesn't.
to be there because they're not going to give him the money.
Which is interesting, considering that he's the sort of, the Corbyn kid, Chelsea through and through, etc.
Yeah.
Now has obviously been is wanting to leave, So, but as he's rightly said, I mean, personally, for me, I think it's a joke that Chelsea wants 70 million for Havertz and Mason Mount. Like it's
they're not going to get it.
Yeah,
No.
Madrid were like, hell no, we're not paying anything more than 50 million at best.
G, you can drop that by another 10. They were only prepared to pay 40 for Kai
40,
Havertz.
even that, exactly. So Arsenal may given the Premier League money, they may pay 60, but I'd even be very surprised if Arsenal pays 70 million. They deserve to not finish top 4 next season if they're paying above 70 million for Kai Havertz, and likewise to Manchester United. Like I don't want to see a situation where Manchester United Football Club are paying 70 million for Kai Havertz, and Sir Jim is owner of the football club and says we want to put the English back in Manchester or some nonsense like that, when their players with Barella, although it looks like the news of putting Barella has been kind of debunked, but the reality is that there are players out there that won't cost that much, from my understanding anyway. Obviously Kim and Jay. So remind me, Tom, his release clause active from when?
The first 2 weeks in July, because he's gone away on military training with South Korea.
Fine. Just reading some comments as well. Yeah, I don't know why we're not looking at Caicedo, Jamie. I don't.
They are with Caicedo. Manchester United are interested in Moses Caicedo. They want to hear what other clubs are prepared to pay for him. They want to be kept informed, essentially, on what other clubs, like, if anything's advanced. So, for example, with Arsenal are the most interested club in Caicedo, but if they have to pay the sort of figure that they're paying for Declan Rice, and they also want, say, Kai Havertz, for example, and as far as I know, with Mikel Arteta, he wants a right back as well. And then maybe a left back if Tierney leaves.
Yeah.
The budget for Arsenal can't stretch that far, so they're going to have to put priority somewhere. And I think rather you get one of Rice and Caicedo, and then you move your money elsewhere for a Havertz and maybe that fullback that I've just discussed and said. So with Caicedo, Arsenal's biggest problem, I guess, biggest competitor for Caicedo is Manchester United. Now people will say, well, Chelsea. Chelsea can't offer Moses Caicedo what he has stated that he wanted when he wanted to leave Brighton in January, which was, I want to play at the biggest table in terms of European football. Chelsea don't have any European football. They don't even have a Thursday night. So he's better off staying at Brighton if he wanted to play something European football. He's got Europa League. So if he wants to play European football, stay where you are then, boy. And wait a year. But in terms of Caicedo, I mean, look, if the Mason Mount deal doesn't go where Manchester United want it to go, they might move on Caicedo. Like, they know they've got £100 million at the very least to spend. Brighton, I think you could get 70 for him personally. They're quoting that they want 80, but they're prepared to drop down. Like the McAllister deal, these players have helped them get European football, so they do have a sense of loyalty and allegiance to them, and they're not going to do a Daniel Levy and hold them to ransom, maybe like they do, like he did with Harry Kane a couple of years ago. They are prepared to let these players go, but they'll give you a fair price for them, but they also want a fair price in return for what they sell them, essentially. And I mean, Caicedo's the big one, really. Like, if they get £70 million when I think they paid less than 10 million euros for him, which, I mean, come on, you've made a profit of upwards of £60 million or something ridiculous like that. Which, at the end of the day, for a club like Brighton, it's to say that they have two stars that they could have sold at that sort of price with McAllister and Caicedo, and potentially in a couple of years' time, you might have the same scenario with Matoma, with Enciso, Estupiñán. Like, you might have a lot of these players that you're going to let go off the books in a couple of years' time. But ultimately and overall, with Caicedo, they want to be kept informed. And look, if the Mason Mount thing went tits up, if Manchester United didn't open talks with Brighton and say, look, let's speak, let's have a conversation, I'd be shocked, really. You want to be kept informed of a player, but if your priority A in Mason Mount doesn't come off, go for your priority B, which I think anyway would be Caicedo. But from what I know of Erik ten Hag, he wants two midfielders anyway. But obviously, because of how the budget is and everything, we don't know how that's going to work, really.
That's fair, Tom. That's fair. I think we should probably round up now. And again, Tom, I really appreciate it. And just obviously, just in a comment, shout out to all the Red Devils sub great channel. Yes, please, guys, make sure that you sub to Red Devils 2 Joe with the new YouTube requirements as well. Consider subbing to my shorts channel, the Red Devils 2 Extra Bit, where I tend to post post-match reactions in clip format. And obviously Red Marvel, which is more regarding like movies, games, video game movies. So head over to my secondary channels and subscribe to those as well. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at WeAreUnitedX, links in description, and follow me on Twitch as well, links on the description. But more importantly, follow Tom at TomJournalist1 on Twitter, guys. This guy is a legend, and this guy continues to give his time to basically give us some more down-to-earth, grounded, solid facts regarding this whole debacle regarding the takeover, and hopefully with transfer news in the summer as well. Tom, thanks again for coming on the show, man. Really appreciate it. And thank you guys, for those in chat, so much for watching the show. Really appreciate it. I presume we'll be back again this week at some point if we get some news regarding the takeover or some transfers, etc. But yeah, have a nice day, everyone. And cheers. Peace out. Peace.